Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Don't worry.
All right, so here we are. This is our very first, our inaugural episode of The Story of Making Tomorrow. And our very first guest is Kristian Hulgard. He runs the basically the Western Hemisphere for OnRobot. OnRobot's famous for not only end effectors, but other things around there. And we're going to talk about some of those things like software, I think.
Yep.
And talk about really the market. And we, in our prior conversations, some very recent conversations, we've woven in those two things, kind of go hand in hand, and what the market drivers are, how on earth we are, as an industry, we're going to serve the needs of industry. I mean, it's so high right now. And so we've got a lot of work to do. But first, if you could tell us a little bit about, your title, what you do with OnRobot, and we'll start there.
OnRobot, as you mentioned, and thank you, by the way, honored to be on the first episode here. It's so cool. I'm happy to be part of it. OnRobot is, well, we started out as a gripper manufacturer. Today, we are a manufacturer of all types of robotic tooling, software, more solution-based products like palletizers, so on and so forth. We have a global outreach, and as you mentioned, I manage the North and South American operation we have here. We work with all the different robot manufacturers. We work in all the different application types. But I think importantly, to set the scene for the listener or the viewer, the things that I'm going to be talking about and the market that we are exposed to and addressing is mainly small and medium-sized companies.
Yep.
And the manufacturer, the automation and the situation for these companies. When we talk about Ford, GM, Boeing, Apple, Google, so on and so forth, their need and the type of automation that they're implementing is completely different. But it's also to give you a comparison and to give you an outlook or an overview of the market. Most of the large manufacturing companies, they are pretty saturated in terms of automation. They've already figured it out. They used automation since the 60s, or maybe even prior. When you look at the output of manufacturing in USA, 80% of that comes from small and medium-sized companies. And 90% of that does not use robotic automation.
90% of that 80%.
Yeah, 90% of that 80%, which means, let's not talk. I don't think it's that interesting to talk about the big guys when we're talking about growth, when we're talking about, a lot of the issues we are going to address today. So just have in mind that what I'm referring to mainly and mostly is small and medium-sized companies.
Okay.
Right.
And we can define that by I'm going to guess maybe anywhere from 10 to a few hundred employees.
That's the sweet spot.
Basically. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good.
But of course, if you have a larger company out there, but you are not using automation, it's probably there will be a lot of valuable information that we're going to talk about as well. I'm just trying to separate my conversation from, fully automatic production lines of cars. I mean, that's right. It's completely, different conversation. So.
No, you see the pictures, I envision in my head all the spot welding that's going on, and you have all these huge robots, bam, bam, bam. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, a lot for viewers of this channel is, metal fabricators and some machining too. But those are the kinds of things where it's about machine tending, and which is a real art unto itself, because you're working with many, many parameters. With a welder, where the universe is, where the spot needs to be welded, and it's a lot of that is what I call XYZ processing, and not so with the machine tending at all, because it's very conditional, right? It's XYZ, but it's conditional too. So
yeah, the machine tending application is probably what we've done the most in our lifetime, or in the company's lifetime. It is our bread and butter business. It's something that is very quickly, it's an easier type application. It's quickly to deploy, and it has a low ROI.
we talked about the sales aspect of this, rolling out solutions. Once you have the solutions, rolling that out to people, and you simply cannot do that with internal company people. There aren't enough of them. There will never be enough of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've managed to set up a partner network for us here in the Americas. We have about 200 registered resellers of our products, which covers all of the U.S. geographically, but also all types of robot brands, all types of applications. So yeah, kudos to my team that in 4 years we've been able to set up agreements and relationships to so many companies. But it's also it's a proof that there are such a huge demand for automation currently, that all these companies have been fast to pull the trigger on, hey, we want to move forward with automation, components and the suite of products that we manufacture, because it helps them deploy robots. So everybody basically wins, right? To paint the picture, and why, when I talk about demand and integrators and distributors and robot manufacturers, right now, I call it the perfect storm, right? We're coming out of COVID, we're literally out of that pandemic, right? During the pandemic, companies were a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger. There was a lot of unawareness of future. It was unpredictable what would go on in the market. But what has been shown is that we buy more products now than we probably ever have done. On top of that, reshoring and moving manufacturing back to the States have also shown a massive interest for the manufacturing industry. So, and then a massive labor shortage, right? We don't have any people who wants to move boxes or stand at a conveyor assembly line, or sand or polish a part. And again, I don't blame them, right? It's not fun to do that job. More and more people want to work behind a computer. We have skill gaps in the new working generation. There's more and more young people that know how to work a computer, but they don't know how to work a CNC machine, for example. So
yeah,
all these factors points towards a massive demand for automation. So yeah, our challenge is, how are we going to meet that demand in time for it not to become irrelevant? What we saw back in the 90s, early 2000s of offshoring our manufacturing was because we were not competitive in the West to manufacture things, right? Now we're moving it back because we have the opportunity to automate and to become competitive. But if we take too long, well, then the equation it doesn't add up, and we will have to start looking outside again. So
yeah,
it's definitely a timing thing. The way we address this demand, and I think the way that everybody addresses it is, how can we solve this demand? IFR says we have to install 10 times as many robots in 5 years. And don't quote me on it. It's something like that, right?
Yeah, crazy.
My question to integrators, to distributors, to robot manufacturers, and to the actual manufacturing companies is, how are you going to do that? How are you actually going to install 10 times as many robots as we've been doing, the past year? You don't have 10 times as many engineers. You don't have 10 times as many salespeople. You don't have 10 times as many, operators on your floor. So the way that I see it is that the only way we can do it is to minimize the deployment time for each robot that goes into manufacturing, right? And how do you do that? I usually split it up in two. One thing is the hardware. Plug and play hardware. Taking a gripper, taking a screwdriver, taking a sander, taking a robot, you click that on, it works, right? You don't need any expertise, you don't need any skill to make that work. So hardware-wise, it's compatible, it's plug and play. I think we've come a long way here. Most, if not all, major manufacturers of components and robots, they cooperate, they work together, and they've unified basically both their communication and their mechanical installation, so you can plug and play hardware today.
Excellent. Now
the next step, and I think what's still missing, is the software part. You still need expertise to program the robots. You still need expertise to make risk assessments. You still need expertise to do this and this. And I'm not claiming that we need to make integrators obsolete or remove them, because there will always be need for expertise. But we don't have enough resources right now to meet the deployment demand. So what we're looking at is, why don't we create software and a solution to take all that and simplify it so that every level of the supply chain can minimize the time they spend on deploying the application. And I'm rambling right now. I'm just
man, this is good. I'm questioning as we're going along.
Yes.
So, what you're describing is software that actually helps you define what the heck it is you're trying to do in the first place, right? So we have a job where we need to move this over here and do some step in between. And
then do it for you.
Yeah.
Because, why do we have to program robots? Why do we have to program grippers? Why do we have to program all this stuff? Why do I need a person to take, week-long training to be able to operate a robot or a gripper or a conveyor or a PLC? Why do I need him? I shouldn't need him. I should have a software. And again, for simple applications, I'm not talking about huge automated cells with multiple robots and all. I'm talking about those 90% of the small and medium-sized companies that never seen a robot in their manufacturing floor before, right?
Right.
Why do I need these guys? I need a software where I can put in, okay, here is a pick position, here is a place position, press play. Now the software will do all the programming, it will do all the risk assessment, it'll do the path programming, the trajectory, everything done, right?
Yeah.
Because those are the typical applications that integrators, that engineering companies, well, they don't have time and resources to take on these things. They are tying up their resources on larger projects, and nobody blames them. It's more fun to work on a $10 million project than a project for $75,000, right? So, but the demand and the need for those $75,000 to $100,000 projects, they're still there, and they're not going away.
Right.
So that software, again, I don't want to make it into a commercial, because that's not why we're here. But we are coming out with our version of that software. It is coming, and I think that is the missing piece. That is one of the missing pieces to our, how do we accelerate the deployment of robots?
It's interesting because you've also, OnRobot has come up with kind of short courses based on different applications in an industrial environment. One of those was machine tending on a press brake, bringing in parts. And I actually took that course, and it was very good. It showed you, here's all the things you can select from, and here's how to build that solution. So out of those things, what are you think the top 5 maybe applications that you're trying to serve, and could those things fit into that profile you just outlined?
Yeah. So CNC, machine tending, mills, lathes, press brakes, taking a part here, putting it in a machine that does something and putting it somewhere else. That application is proven thousands and thousands of times that is a very, very easy thing to solve with a robot, and it is my top. That will be my top 5. I'll talk about one other application type in a minute, but
okay,
I'll tell you, if you're a manufacturing company and you have a guy loading and unloading a machine,
yeah,
you're not using your full potential. You have to automate that. You have to do it. The ROI is less than a year, right? Even if you're running one shift, even if you have hundreds of different parts and only small volumes, it's proven. It's that type of application is it's so simple to do. You have to do it. Now that is and will probably always be the most popular application when talking about small and medium-sized companies.
Okay.
There's one other trend I've seen, which is also in the metal machining industry. It's in a lot of different industries, and that is end-of-line packaging and palletizing.
Oh yeah, yep.
Because it's easy. You don't need to change your flow of your manufacturing because it's at the end of the line, right? You have to take a box and put it on a pallet. And it's small little anecdote, and that is I definitely confirmed that I'm completely damaged by the industry because I went on a recreational trip to Louisville, Kentucky actually last week.
Okay.
I took a few distillery tours, which was absolutely fantastic.
Nice.
Walked through their manufacturing, and they show us how, and every single one of them there was a guy taking a box and putting it on a pallet. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? That is crazy. There are so many companies still that has a guy standing there and putting boxes on. And it is simply just, it's a simple thing to do to solve automation-wise. And again, ROI within probably a year.
Yeah. So
I see it everywhere in every type of industry. People putting boxes on pallets, and that is really hot topic right now. Palletizers have never grown as fast as they do right now. You can get out-of-box solutions right for less than 100,000. That is pretty appealing for most companies. So
yeah.
So that's my top applications. That's the most popular.
Okay, I'm going to throw one more in there. Not that you asked me to, but the fabricators out there, this is a big thing for them. For example, on a laser cutter, part sorting. So you have a nest that's maybe 10 feet long by 10 feet wide, or 5 feet wide, and you've just cut a bunch of 2D parts, and they fall into a bin. And now you're hired people to pull out this part and that part, and they're wearing gloves because it's still sharp, it's not deburred yet. And that would seem a really good growth area too. So all you'd have to do is find out who's got laser cutters, and off you go.
Yep, we have both a laser cutter and laser engraving applications, and also case studies on our website. People can go in and try to
great,
look and see and get a little bit of inspiration there if that may help. But I think there's one feature I wanted to use as an example when you say, hey, it cuts it in different sizes and you're kind of sorting it, and if this is this size, I want to do this. And it's another really cool thing about electric tooling and talking about this modern technology, also that usually small and medium-sized companies don't know much about. If they think about robots, they think about this typical robot that you saw in the 80s, like big, bulky, with all these tubes and hoses on. And it looks so confusing from the start, right? The modern technology, more and more gripping or tooling technology goes electric way instead of pneumatic powered, which eliminates a lot of both investment and maintenance and need for expertise to install. You don't need a compressor, you don't need those the tubes, you don't need maintenance again on the system. Now, an electric ripper, for example, is not only smart because it just uses the power from the robot, it's also, again, software controlled. With the software on an electric ripper, because it's a motor moving the fingers, that you can read the size of the part you're gripping, right? You don't need an external sensor to tell you how large your part is. You simply grip it, and the encoder in the motor will tell you, hey, this is a 2-inch part. And now the robot can move it to the bin with 2-inch parts, or to put it in with the laser cutter that needs to do whatever it needs to do with that specific part. So there's a lot, there's a lot of intuitive things, or there's a lot of features you can do intuitively with the robot with use of these electric tools instead.
Okay, go ahead.
No, that's just the trend. I mean, when we see these smaller types of automation projects, 1-2 robot projects, again, for small and medium-sized companies, it's usually electric tooling they go for.
Okay. Tell me on a palletizing or a part moving application, a lot of times a suction end effector is the one of choice. It's just perfect for it. How is that? Can you have that done electrically?
Absolutely. So traditionally, you would have the compressor externally and stand next to the robot. Some manufacturing companies would also have central compressed air, right? In the facility.
Mm-hmm.
But so instead of using that type of vacuum, we've moved the vacuum and the pump into the tool. So it's still just plug and play with the robot, and the tool will feed power of the robot and then activate its vacuum pump. And what is the benefit of it? Again, air is extremely costly. Even if you have a central compressor system, the actual hardware and the maintenance on the system is very expensive. And again, the only way you can control it is a valve. It's a physical valve. We control our vacuum with software. So I can input, I will need this vacuum level. I can detect whether I have a grip or not. I can detect if I lost my part. All this stuff is based on software. I have sensors in it, so I know if I reach a certain level. I also know if I'm losing vacuum, so the pump will start back up and compensate for that as well. It's just a smarter, more modern solution, and it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a win-win to.
Yeah, I can tell you the factories I've been to, I always see, not always, but you go in and see these places where they have central suction air. And I just wonder, God, how much money is being wasted by, there's no way you have a 200,000 foot facility and you don't have one leak in the system.
It's one of the largest operational expenses in many companies, and there's so much. It's not the actual cost of it. It's to me, it is the money wasted on it. There are always a lot of leaks in these systems. There's always a lot of maintenance, and you just produce air that's just going somewhere you'd have no idea.
Right.
If you use electric tooling, which more and more are moving to electric solutions, right? Well, you don't have those issues. Yeah. You're very aware of where your cost is, and you can control it. That's basically.
Yeah, good. Okay, let's shift gears to something you already mentioned, and that is software. I know you have a lot of stuff coming up on that, and I don't know how much you can even talk about it, but general terms, I'm sure you can. There's some exciting things happening. So yeah. Can you clue us in as much as you can?
Yeah, so I see the evolution in the collaborative and lightweight industrial robot automation. That's a long title. I see it. I mean, I compare it to what we've seen computers did in the 80s and 90s. You know, moving away from hardware specific things and moving into software, right? More and more value is created on a software level, and going into the future, that won't change. Now, I already explained sort of the ways we can meet the demand and how we can solve our issues in you know, in the speed and momentum that we want for meeting the demand of the market. And software is the only way we can really solve it. And I described our future product, which we will call Deploy.
Okay.
Which will be fully automated programming for simple collaborative and lightweight industrial applications. And what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things on on different levels of the supply chain. You know, one thing is, if we talk about the level of integration and integrators and distributors, it means that the companies can take on more projects. They can minimize their deployment time per project so that they can take on more, and therefore meet the demand of, or the forecast of 10 times as many robots in 5 years, right? Meet the demand of the market. They can choose to increase their profit margin if they don't want to take in more projects, or they can take a more competitive position in the market versus their competing integrators, right? Then the level of end users, well, that's a pretty given. Hey, you can actually get somebody to install your automation, and we can do it at a faster and a cheaper rate than ever seen before. So there is a clear position and a clear place for this product in the market. And we've seen, you know, it's not something that we just came up with. We've been working on this for 3 years already, conceptualizing it and actually putting our R&D department on the task of creating the product. And it is something that has come from demand in the markets. Literally people saying, we need this. Why do we program? Why do I need to program the robot? I don't want to program the robot. I don't have an engineer I can put on the task, and the end user don't know how to do it. So why don't we create a software that can just do it for us?
Good. Yeah, that's a good intro. It's interesting to me. A lot of the trend, the biggest trend I see right now in software is the ability to take a single, what would you call it? Object, like object-oriented programming, take that one object and place it into a, I don't know, a software queue, and it knows what you want with a couple of parameters set. Bam, here's an object-oriented entire program of what you want to do. And you don't have to do a thing. All you had to do was enter the initial conditions and have the one object. Is that kind of the idea?
That is, we call it a guided flow, which is basically, of course, there are some parameters you need to tell the software, right? Hey, you know, what part am I picking? Where do I pick it up? Where do I place it? Are there any obstacles? There are a few parameters you need to input, but all the tedious, all the parts of the installation process that really needs very high level of expertise, we try to eliminate that.
Okay.
And then another part of the software is, of course, monitoring. And, you know, we've been talking about Industry 4.0 for a while. I heard the other day there was a presentation on Industry 5.0. I haven't heard that yet, or I don't know much about it, but it is, anyway, you know, creating transparency and to know and monitor every single part of your application and create data. And based on that data, you can take smarter decisions. And that is, I mean, that is, again, you have to have those functions in any type of software, or at least you have to have it available for any type of application and software you use for installing robots.
And that brings up another software piece. Maybe this is because of how many years I've been on the earth, but I don't I don't see the metaverse taking root. I do see many verses taking root, though. And this is kind of where we're at right now, arguably, where these things are happening for you. It doesn't require your work as the metaverse does, requires your work to, okay, I'm doing this thing and that thing and that thing. This is there to serve you, not for you to serve it. This miniverse concept. And I totally see that winning the day, that kind of structure or philosophy behind software. And it seems like that will drive. My question to you is, how big is your scope on that? Are you, are you including the robotic people? Are you including, I don't know, how far is your reach?
So we currently, right now, and also for the future, we will never go into manufacturing of robots, right? Mm-hmm. We partner with all robotic brands, and we want to help the robot companies to deploy their robots. However, I want to challenge the way that people install and deploy robots today. The whole process today is, hey, I'm a manufacturing company. I want to start automating this task. Okay, now I call an engineering company, and I'm skeptic because it's my business and I've worked hard for it, and that's fine, right? So I want the engineering company to make a proof of concept for me. I want drawings. I want to see everything. I want to approve budgets. I want to do all that, right? It takes quite a while, and I'm probably getting charged for a lot of it too. I get a lot of experts involved because I want to do it right, and usually a project can take 3 to 6 months before it's installed. And this is simple automation, right? So I want to challenge that process. I think we've come a long way with standardized automation solutions that are plug and play in your manufacturing floor, but we're not at the full potential. So I want to eliminate proof of concepts. Why do we have to prove when I can take all my stuff? I can go into your manufacturing facility, your existing facility, and I can have it up and running in one day. Why do you want to pay for a proof of concept? Because if it doesn't work, I'll take all my stuff and I'll leave. But
I get it.
It's controversial, but why do we go through all this pain? You can pick up the phone and say, hey, come and automate this for me, and within a week it's up and running. And this is my prediction of the future, and people can laugh at me or whatever, it's fine. My opinion is Uber for automation is happening.
Yes.
So there will be a day and time where it's so user-friendly and so consumer-oriented that you have your app on your phone, you take a picture of where you want to automate, and the next day there will be guys installing that, and you just pay per cycle or pay however you want to pay, right? Do you want to pay all the part? Do you want to own it, or do you want to lease it, or you want to pay per click?
That's the other thing. Yeah.
All that is happening.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. And I know it's not the way we do business today, but the fact is, if we have to install again those 10 times as many robots in 5 years, I know I'm repeating myself, but then we cannot do business as we do today.
Correct. No, even the machine tools themselves are being leased.
Yes.
It's
and that's a separate. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
A separate conversation, right? One thing is that how do we install and how do we deploy and how do we do it easy? I think we at least have an idea on how to solve that. So another thing is how do we finance it? Do you want to buy all of it? Because you might want to change your products in 3 years or 4 years. You don't know how your landscape looks unless you're in the beverage container industry, right? That's been looking pretty much the same all the time. But if you're a CNC stuff, if you're a metal manufacturer, your customer is going to change his products, right? You want to make sure that the investment you make also fits the next products. You're
correct. Yeah, and you have to be flexible because it's a low volume, high turn world.
Yes,
for the most part.
So do you want to pay everything up front, do that capital investment, or do you want to pay per cycle of the robot running and click? You know, you can monitor your cost better, you can control your cost better, or do you want to lease it? Or, you know, those offerings, those services are actually starting to pop up. It's an emerging market right now, but it is out there. And my prediction is it will only become bigger and bigger. Why do I have to pay all this money up front where I can just spread out my investment in 5-10 years, right? And I know there's a lot of conservative people out there that will say, well, it's only good for people who don't have money. But I don't believe that's the truth. It depends on how your contract looks. Well,
it's like a car. I mean, the maintenance comes with it, everything, right? And here's your monthly bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have a very dirty environment? You know, are you putting more wear and tear on your on your equipment? It might be an idea to get your free maintenance in there, right? So there's a lot of decisions you have to take, or a lot of things that needs to lead to whatever decisions you take. So, yeah, very good that you brought that up, Dave, because I know that that's going to be bigger and bigger part of automating in the future too.
I think so too. Now let's do my viewers a huge favor. Let's talk about somebody who's never put together a system, but it's going to be easier and easier. Now if you can stand me talking for another minute or so. Back in the day, we talked about we talked about computers, and when the process for solving some kind of a problem with the computer was, first, define your problem. What is it that you want to do? Second, and this is really kind of the first as it hits the computer, what kind of software exists to do what you want to do? So I want something that will take my annual report and mix it around and show me patterns, you know. And there was such a environment, but all right, so does that piece of software exist? Yes. Okay. What does it run on? That became more complicated as the years went on, you know, and we would say, oh, it runs on Unix, or it runs on DOS, or it runs on Windows. But then it became, you know, the real software that does that was part of the SAP suite. So it runs within SAP, which then runs on, here are the software platforms, the operating systems. Then what hardware you do? What hardware does that operating system run on? So all those things have to be in line. What's the equivalent of that for, I've got a job to do for a robot?
Yeah.
I took the easy part.
There's no easy answer. There probably will, the answer will be easier the next 5 years. But of course, it's a jungle. I've been talking people's ears off right now of easy, and all this will solve all your nightmares and all. But the fact is that the offerings and the landscape of offerings are huge, and the right solution, it's out there. Everything is possible to solve, even the most complex problem you might have in your manufacturing facility. My suggestion, and will always be to any person who comes up with a problem, is, of course, find a local integrator or distributor that is exposed to a lot more automation projects and a lot more components and softwares and all that than you are, right? If you start Googling, you'll find out that there are millions of offerings and solutions out there. At least these guys will have proven projects and have experience with some of it, right? Another thing is, which is super important, don't start with the big, grand automation projects that will solve all your problems. You know, start simple and start with the easiest and the simplest task you have, and from there build on. I've seen people that try to solve everything at one time, and it just becomes this big monster of a project that never really ends up being a good thing. So start simple and get with your local supplier of automation. Have a conversation. Everybody can give you a free of charge conversation and share their experience. And you, as the owner of the business, you can use your gut feeling to see if that's something that's smart. But yeah, right now, I mean, the market is a big place. There's a lot of different things to choose from. There's a lot of, am I using this or am I using that? Many times it doesn't really matter. I mean, don't tell anybody I said this, because I also have fun. But of course, there's a lot of manufacturing companies that have the same value proposition, that has the same type of product. And whether you use this valve or another valve, depending on who you ask, both of them are the right thing to choose, right?
Right.
So just go with who your local supplier is confident with and has experience with, and I'm sure you'll get a nice solution in your facility for sure.
And the really exciting thing is, just like the computers were deployed, people didn't touch computers. Those guys who knew about computers, they came in and set up the computers and everything. And now we're in, it's a joke. I mean, oh, okay, I got a new laptop and my phone's hooked to it and all the stuff. And we do that as consumers. And
we're getting pretty well into that in automation as well.
I think so.
Yeah, the first level of it was the birth of the cobot. Collaborative robot. It was safe to use and it was easier to program.
Yeah.
So many end users with somewhat technical knowledge, they could actually start doing their own projects, which is fantastic. Of course, I mean, there is still need for expertise once in a while, and depending on how complex your problem is and so on. But now with Deploy, the software I was talking about will give the end users even bigger tools to just do it themselves.
Right.
And that's also fine. Part of those 10 times as many robots, again, part of that will also be end users installing their own projects.
Yeah.
The tools out there, hardware, plug and play, and software, you can install it yourself. Okay, there you go. CNC, CNC machine tending applications, I think a big part of that will be done by the user themselves.
Interesting. Okay. So, and really, those are more of my viewers than anyone else because they're the ones running the machine tools. So, yeah.
And most of these companies, in my experience, have technical personnel. They already have operators that know how to run a CNC machine. That's not easy to do.
Right.
So if they can run the CNC machine, they can definitely also run the cobot or the Deploy application that we're going to introduce to them, right? So, yeah, definitely big part of that deployment, big part of the deployment number of robots deployed. Sorry, that was what I wanted to say. Yeah. Is going to be end users for sure.
Okay.
And going into the Uber talk, Uber for automation.
Yeah.
That's gonna completely change the game.
Let's say I'm a fabricator and I need to move boxes, and maybe it's a palletizing thing. And I run into, there's maybe 4 different kinds or 5 different kinds. What, as a person who has never done this, let's say, am I looking at suction? Am I looking at pressure, grabbing things that have torque and pressure sensors on them? How do people sort that out? Do you have that on your side as well?
Yeah, we actually have a palletizing solution, which is all the components you need besides the robot. So you figure out what robot that fits best to the palletizing, the boxes, the pallet, whatever you're manufacturing. There are reach, there are speed, there are payloads you have to consider, and then you basically plug it into our solution. And the solution have a telescopic lift, so we can make sure that we can reach all the box positions. It has pallet sensors, so we know if sensors are there. And then the grippers. Sorry, we have vacuum-based grippers. We have a big 2-finger gripper that can squeeze and we will guide the end user to what tool would fit them.
Okay.
Most of the times, 80% of the times, the vacuum-based grip is the best option, because it gives you the ability to stack and to squeeze the boxes as tight as possible together. If you do have a finger that grips the box on each side, of course that finger will leave a gap on the box, right? But there are boxes that cannot be gripped by vacuum. Let's say foil wrapped bottles or ready to shelf boxes, with chips bags, or there's a lot of products that cannot be gripped by vacuum. So there you would need a finger gripper. Then moving into how do I get it installed and how do I program it? Well, right now, again, software, we do have palletizing software that basically programs the robot for you. So you would define a pick position, and that's your in-feed position, meaning it's the conveyor where the box comes on. And then you define the pallet positions. From there on, you can drag and drop and click around and create your pattern of your boxes. Most companies have their own pattern in a way that their customers can receive it. Let's say you don't have it, then we have an automatic feature that will just populate the palette for the highest efficiency. But let's say you do have your own pattern, you can configure that and design it in the software. Then you click go, and the robot will move to those positions.
Okay, so I think we actually go ahead.
Yeah, very intuitive, easy to use. Again, eliminates completely the part where you have to program the robot. We take control of the robot and move it to the pick and place positions.
Okay, I think that was at Automate, right?
Yes.
And I think we did a brief article on that as well. So come on to our site if you want to know more, or just go right to OnRobot, and that's onrobot.com.
You got
it. What did we miss in our sort of rambling but very exciting conversation here?
Well, I don't know. I think we covered it pretty well. I think, have an eye. If you're one of the 90% of small and medium-sized companies that don't use automation, I highly encourage you to start looking. The time, the second that you realize that you really need it, it's usually too late. And it's because you can't find anybody to do it, and you're stuck, and you have to stop the manufacturing at some point because you don't have people to do it. That's critical to get into the game ahead of time before it becomes a problem. So I encourage you, reach out, either to us or your local integrator or something, and get the conversation started.
Okay, we're going to look at your shirt, but before we do, we are. I'd like you to answer this. So many people see robots and they think, oh, okay, that's all replacing people. That guy got replaced. That guy got replaced. And really, that does happen, but it can also be a freeing thing, where now this person can do some higher value work instead of, wearing out their bones on this particular task. Also, there are robotic things that just don't replace people. They do new things. And that's what I'd really like you to talk about briefly, if you could.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned, hey, the robots are stealing our jobs. It doesn't have anything on it, really, and not anymore. The labor shortage we have is a clear example of, we're not stealing jobs. We're actually, we're doing the things that people don't want to do.
Yep.
Once in a while, once in a blue moon, there might be a person sitting there on a conveyor belt assembling something, and a robot will take over. But what we see is that person won't get fired. They will be used in another place in the manufacturing, or they will get education, and they will start, then they will start servicing 3 or 4 robot systems, working in the manufacturing floor, making that person's job also more interesting, giving them better CV, helping them educate and develop in their workspace. So it is not, we don't see any people really get fired because robots are getting installed. That is old-fashioned 80s way of thinking. Now we need it, and if anybody wants a job in the manufacturing, then we have to, because it's a matter of time. If we don't automate, if we don't install robots, we will not be competitive versus the Far East and so on. I mean, cheaper labor markets. California has a minimum wage of around $20, I think. That's just not competitive versus Chinese labor costs, right? So let's stop being arrogant or being scared of technology. Let's embrace it and make it work for us, and then the jobs will come. Technology has sometimes been rough on certain markets because they make them obsolete. Like Uber have been tough on the taxi market, right? But they have created twice as many drivers having jobs than taxi. So everything, everything comes with cost. Yeah, there are some small shops that closed down because Amazon has been taking a lot of online shopping over and stuff, but they created more jobs. They created a bigger market for it. So everything comes with their upsides as well. If people just focus on the negative, it doesn't show the full picture. So that's my 2 cents.
Good. Okay. What about this? Just real quick, the second part of that question, which was, sometimes they're doing things that people weren't even doing in the first place. Correct?
What do you mean about that?
They didn't necessarily take over a job. See that guy hauling the boxes from here to here? Now the robot does it. The robot may be installed to do something that wasn't possible with a human being doing it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the robot in general, in terms of manual labor, is just better at it than we are. It doesn't get COVID. It doesn't get sick days. It doesn't have. I mean, it's just better. So why are we focusing on all these things that we're not very good at? People are really good. Most of our inventions and as humankind is because we're lazy, and that's fantastic. Let's be lazy. No, let's be as lazy. Why do we have to go out and put things in boxes and stuff like? Let's be lazy about it. Let's educate ourselves. Let's make the world a better place. To me, I know that's it's maybe a little fluffy to say, but
no, I get it.
Let's use the tools we have and the technology we have, and let the robots be good at what they do. Right?
Yeah. Good. Okay. Let's see that shirt again. 250 and 2025. I think I might know the answer now. I didn't have any idea when we started, but go ahead.
Well, that's our growth goal. We want to grow to revenue of 250 million in 2025.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking. I thought you were going to say 250 distributor partners.
No, that we will probably cross that bridge next year.
Okay.
Wait for 2025 for doing that.
And the fact that rests on your shoulders, that doesn't bother you in the least.
Not at all. You see, I already lost all my. I mean, what more can they change?
Oh man, that's great. No, I know it's a team sport, and you have lots of help, and really a lot of market forces that are kind of converging, as we talked about. So
we have a great team on an operational level. I'm very blessed to work with the people I do, but also a very great team investor level. The owners and the visionaries that are behind this company have changed the industry before, and I personally am certain they will change the industry again. So
very impressive. Yep. All right.
Exciting time.
Yes, it is. I can't thank you enough, Kristian. This has been a great interview, and we'll do it again. But thank you for being first, man.
I'm honored.
Here.
Awesome. I can't wait.